So a lot of people don't know this story that this one time I almost died in the desert. Now, when I lived in Flagstaff, my boyfriend and I decided that it was an amazing idea for somebody there who's never really gone a whole lot of long distance hiking, except for camping trips, decided that we were going to do this 13-mile hike down into Sedona from an area that was about, I don't know, let's say, I think we went down about 5,000 feet. I don't know. It was a lot. We hiked down about 5,000 feet, but this was a 13 mile hike that he convinced me to do in a day. And so it was great. We started off, we got up really early. We went down there, walking down this trail, down this mountain at, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning was awesome. And we finally get down to where we're going to go to the creek. In Sedona, if you've never been to Sedona, like these trails are like in the middle of nowhere. There is literally nothing around. It can be cool at 9 a.m., but as soon as that sun starts coming up, it gets to 112 to 118 real fast. And there's not a whole lot of shade. So this whole trip, I'm just setting it for you because it's the desert, right? It is the desert. And Dustin also has not gone hiking at this point a whole lot in the desert. But we've got our backpacks, we've got our water, we've got everything. And so, there's one thing that I used to hate to be called, or because I grew up with 4 older brothers, like I felt like I always had something to prove, and I never wanted to come across as the weak one. And that has served me well and not so well in my life. But this was a time that it served me very well. So we get down there, we hit the bottom of the trail in Sedona. It's now about 14, and our map and the way that the creek was supposed to be wasn't quite accurate, which is that's totally the case. A lot of these maps, when this was going on, a lot of these maps were maybe a little unreliable. They'd been old trails. There's been, stuff grown over. It was remote. Like they decided not to use it as a trail anymore. Like all that stuff can happen when you're hiking in the middle of nowhere in Sedona. And so we start on this hike, and it's noon, and we've been hiking for a couple hours now. And we've dropped down this elevation, and it's really hot. There's not a whole lot of shade, and where we thought the water was going to be so we could cool off wasn't there. And so we had to go, we were like, okay, so if nothing else, we mapped it out, and it was like a couple more miles to the water, worst case scenario. So we were like, okay, so let's go. And I'm starting to get hot. I'm starting to get hungry. We're already miles into this hike now. And I feel something on the back of my leg, and we're walking, and all of a sudden I realize, and I look down and I realize that my camelback has just broke. And all of the water that I was carrying, because you can't fuck around in the desert. Like you have to bring some water with you. And all of my water leaked out. And Rob doesn't have enough water for both of us, having it being 114 degrees, set to get up to about 118, 120 for both of us to continue the hike to the water and then make it back, because we needed to reserve all the water that we had to make it back up the mountain that we just climbed down, basically. So it was like one of those oh shit moments, and you're like, well, okay, I'm getting super hot already. And we're like, let's find a little tree that we can kind of sit down and just, we found like a really snarly, like old freaking Sedona tree, and there was a little shade. And so we got under that, and I sat back and I leaned back, and I literally passed out. I literally just like fainted. But Rob looked at me and he was like, Dustin. And I was like, what? I'm fine. Like, I'm fine. I'm good. Like, what are we doing? And I didn't want to tell him that I fainted because, heat stroke is a major thing out there. You know, like you can die very, very easily in the desert if you don't have any water, because it's so hot, because there's so little shade. And you can go into, you know, heat exhaustion very quickly. And some of the signs are fainting. And so I got up and I was like, okay, well, if we're going to do this, we got to do this. Like, I got to keep going. Because if I stop, apparently, like, it was not good if I stopped. And so I was like, I got to go pee first. So I went to go pee. And I noticed that my pee was also like fluorescent color. And I was like, this is not good. Like, this is not good. Because that is another sign when your pee changes color, like to a certain extent, like this was, that can be a sign of dehydration already and can be a sign of heat stroke. So I didn't tell Rob about that. So we're walking up and literally, like, we had just come down from 5,000 feet that we had to go up. So it's not like this was a super steep mountain, but it was steep enough that it was like the hardest part, right? Like the hardest part. And I remember I just kept looking down at my feet and I was like, just one more step. Okay. One more step. Okay. One more step. And it was getting to the point, we had walked another hour or so. We're taking little sips, but quickly him and I ran out of his water. We ran out of his water and we still had a long way to go. And there wasn't any shade on the trail back up. And we were about an hour up into it. And I literally was like starting to freeze. Like I was shaking. I was cold. That is another sign. Of heat stroke. And you guys, this was before like we had cell towers everywhere. I think maybe we had a cell phone. Maybe. I don't know. Actually, I don't think we did have a cell phone. I don't think people were carrying cell phones then. I don't know. If we did have a cell phone, we certainly didn't have service. Like it was one of the first phones, and we definitely didn't have service where we were out in the desert. And so it's a bad sign when you start to get cold and it's 120 degrees and you're dehydrated. Like you can die very quickly. And I was really trying not to think about that. So I was just like, okay, one foot in front of the other. And we weren't sure what we were going to do, because either Rob was going to have to leave me, hike back, get some help, get a helicopter, and come and get me. And I was like, oh, hell no. Hell no. So I just kept looking down at my feet. And I was like, 1 foot, 2 foot, 1 foot, one step, whatever I could say to my feet, just take one step at a time, just one step at a time. And it was like literally 1 foot, next foot, 1 foot, next foot. And I wasn't really thinking clear at this point either. And all of a sudden, it came up, because you guys, we still had hours to go. We still had miles to go. Like this was only an hour back into our hike up, and uphill takes a lot longer. So, you know, it's 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the afternoon. It's becoming the hottest part of the day. There's literally no shade, and we have hours of hiking left to do and no water. I'm so glad I never told my mom this story. And I look over, and there's this like kind of little strange opening. And I remember thinking like, I don't know that I'm going to make it. I'm not sure I'm going to make it. And I hear Rob say something, and all of a sudden, you guys, there was like this kind of little oasis that my angels put right there in the desert, like this little pool that was probably 5 by 5. It was maybe like this deep of water. Let me just tell you, this water saved my life. This water saved my life, because what I needed to do immediately is I needed to get my core temperature down. That is what I needed to do. Otherwise, I wasn't going to make it. So I literally stripped off my clothes and literally laid in this pool. because I needed to get my core temperature down. And I think Rob laid in there with me, but that, like, this was number one. This was the emergency that we needed to, like, take care of. And so how this water was there, by the grace of God, by the grace of God and our angels that were looking out for us, was this water there, because we stayed there for about an hour. But we knew that we still had to make it up several hours. And so if I was going to make it, like, we needed to get moving, because otherwise, like, it wasn't, the situation wasn't going to get any better the longer that we avoided the situation that we're in. So, you know, this spoke to me a lot about life too. And afterwards, is because you can try and we do this as human beings. We try and resist and avoid this and run away from the situation. But does the situation really get any better? And it doesn't. Like, it doesn't. We would have been really screwed with having very little clothing out in the desert where it drops 50 degrees in the middle of nowhere where there's all these wild animals. And, like, no preparation for camping, right? We would have been in worse trouble. With the longer that we were there without water in this heat, we were in trouble. We were in trouble. So we soaked our t-shirts. I think Rob had like an extra t-shirt or something like that. I think I had like 2 t-shirts or something too, but we soaked this t-shirt in water, and this was not the water. This is not the kind of water you wanted to drink. Like, you would get sick from really drinking this water. So it's not like we could drink this water either. But I needed something to keep us going. Like, I needed something to keep us going. So we soaked the shirts in water and around our neck. And then when we wanted water, we'd like kind of suck on the shirt and then spit it out. And this got like your mouth wet. And we also filtered some water as best we could through a couple of t-shirts into a water jug. So we had extra that we could like swish around in our mouth as well. Like, if we absolutely needed it. So we did that too. And for whatever reason, I was like always the prepared girl. I had everything. And for whatever reason, like, I didn't have water tablets, which normally I would always carry because I dated a Boy Scout. Like, I would always have water tablets with me, but we didn't have a water filter or anything like that. But also, you know, our plans had been to go to the river, and we never made it there either. So, yeah. So, okay. So at this point, we started going, and I don't remember how I actually made that. Because the entire time I was looking down at my feet, and this I can really remember because I still didn't know if I had it in me to make it. Everything in me wanted to lay down, wanted to curl up, wanted to go to sleep. That was like everything in me. I was so tired, like being that dehydrated out in the sunshine, like that kind of heat, like everything in your body hurts. Like everything in your body hurts. And so I just remember looking down at my feet, and I was like, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, because I knew that if I was going to go out, I was going to go out walking, right? Like, I was going to fall over walking. But if I put all of my focus, energy, and attention at just going 1, 2, I could do that. I maybe couldn't make it the 9 miles that we had to go. I maybe couldn't make it. But I could make the 1, 2 step. And we got back to the car. It was like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night that we got back to the car. We had like scalding hot water in the car from a bottle, like a half a bottle of water that he had left in the car. We both shared that. We stopped at the next gas station. I think I got a water and like an electrolyte drink, and he got like 2 or 3 things. And we know you're not supposed to chug them, but we chugged them. That was like the best water that I've ever had in my entire life. It was so good. And I remember going to sleep that night, and like, I think both of us literally, like, were still doing the 1-2 shuffle, like, into bed that night. We got undressed, like, laid down, and we were like, out. Because the truth is I